Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, BCW Supplies. They provide bags and boards for your comics, and so you can use code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your entire order. And obviously, with my guest, we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, and one of the things we're going to be talking about is his and his company's comics, and the best thing to do is to protect your comics. So I recommend everybody use that code, save yourself some money. Inflation sucks, and that's what I'm here to do. Help everybody out, support the show, make everything work, and just protect your valuables is all I'm going to say on that point. And so without further ado, and I'm not going to bore everybody with the rest of my sponsors here, I have with me comic creator and music creator from the band Tomorrow's End. I think your name's Nathaniel, right?
It is, yes.
Oh, thank God. Thank God I got that right. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm just like we was talking about before. I really appreciate being here and that you had me on and giving me a chance to tell my story. So I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, you did support this show, and every little bit helps. It helps keep the lights on, and I truly appreciate that. And I do recommend everybody, you got to support people doing good things in the world and support projects, as it does go a long way. $1 helps, $100 helps. Also, a like on Facebook helps just as well. But enough about that. Enough about me shilling and asking people for money, because there's a lot to talk about. And obviously, I think the best place to start is with what is Tomorrow's End for those who are hearing about it for the first time, because it is a very interesting and vast project, for
Well,
lack of a
thank you.
better word.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, Tomorrow's End, I guess sometimes we refer to ourselves as a camp, and people's like, what's a camp? We just refer to ourselves as a Christian art music project or media project. And the reason that is because we're going to be doing, we've released 4 albums this year, 4 10 songs albums. They're on all streaming platforms. And the songs are for free on our website if you want to check them out, anybody, just at tomorrowsend.com under the music tab. But we do music, we do videos, we do comics, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. We also have a card game that we've released, as well as a board game that'll be coming out by the end of the year. And a stop motion project will be at the first quarter of next year, where the guy that draws a comic, awesome artist, Dan Drews from Indiana, if he's listening, and he's actually making custom action figures for us of the characters so we can do a stop motion. And that's the art of Tomorrow's End. But what Tomorrow's End really is, it's really like a ministry project, I guess is the best way to put it. Because when I was 17 years old, I was actually diagnosed with bone cancer, and I was a senior in high school. Thought my whole life was ahead of me. I had plans of, maybe one day trying to be a professional wrestler or something like that, and because I was humongous into wrestling, and so I was working out at the time, and I was had a big like softball shaped like growth on my knee, and I went to the doctor, and they told me, "Oh, that's just must be where you fell working out or something," because when you do squats, sometimes your knee gives out and you hit the concrete. So I was like, "Okay, cool." Go back a week later, it's even bigger, and they say you need to get that checked out. So I went to Birmingham, Alabama. We are from Cleveland, Tennessee, but that's where they sent me to do my biopsy. They said that nobody here could actually like treat it, so they sent me down to another state, to Birmingham. They did the biopsy. They called me later that night and say, "Hey, this is cancer, actually." So what the cool thing about all this is at this moment in time when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was not a Christian. I had no faith whatsoever. I had actually been turned off by like all the hypocrisy and the stuff I'd seen in my school, on the TV, and preachers that I even met in real life. When I went to their church before or something, they would preach one thing, but their life would be totally different. And so I was like, I'm not going to be involved in that hypocrisy. I'm not getting involved in it. So I finally realized when I was diagnosed, though, that day at 17, like literally they called me. It took about 3 hours to get back home from the biopsy that night from Birmingham. And we got back home to Cleveland, and they called and said, "Actually, this is cancerous. You very well, might not live through it." There's honest. And they said it was called osteosarcoma. They said not everybody lives through it. We got a treatment plan, but we'll see what we can do. So as we hung up the phone, I sat on my couch with my grandmother, and I started realizing I had turned away a perfect Christ and God based on imperfect people that was never going to live up. And I was like, why am I turning away, somebody perfect for people that are, that may not even have Christ themselves? So I was judging Christianity based on these people who actually, they might say they're Christians, but nothing in their life would, showcase that they were. So I accepted Christ in my heart on that day, and I got through my cancer. I just turned 36. I've been about 17 years cancer free. I went through a year and a half of chemos and surgeries, and they're, got a rod in my leg and all this stuff, and very blessed. And so our biggest thing that I think we're trying to do is just have people take a second look. Like behind me, you'll see mannequins of the characters, that's, which you noticed when I first logged on. And the biggest thing
I stupidly asked, I might add, because I didn't know if it was like a green screen, because green screens look real sometimes.
No, they do, but no, these are just the mannequins of the characters behind us that we portray when we go out and play. When we play like in these outfits and stuff, and they all mean something. And they're the same characters that appear in the comics. They're the same characters that's going to be in the stop motion, and the same characters that are in the videos. And the point of all this is like when you first saw it, you took a second look, and that's the whole point, is to get people to take a second look at your life, and say, have I ever actually looked at Christ, Jesus Christ, and looked at him as the person and what he taught and how he walked? Or have I just looked at, like I used to, the hypocrisy and the stuff that you see from flawed people, and just take a second look? And also, it's for people that claim Christianity and they say, I'm saved and stuff, I believe in Christ, but they, they'll mug you in the street if you go in the alley with them, they take your money or something. So the point is, make sure that they take a second look and say, am I really living, a Christian life? Am I practicing what I preach, as the old adage goes? But that's in a nutshell, I guess, what Tomorrow's End is. And like, it's something that we just feel very strongly about, trying to get people to realize that Christ is not the people that proclaim him. Christ is, the embodiment of the scriptures and stuff, what scripture dictates he is, and who he said he was. And so that's what we're just trying to do, is get people to take a second look and at the person of Christ, and not people that necessarily say they are of him, if that makes sense in a nutshell.
To some degree, I'm not an expert on.
I understand.
I
get it.
Clear. Like, I get the mission, though. I get the mission,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand. I just want to make it perfectly clear so nobody ever cites me on that ever again.
No, I understand, and something else that I probably better mention. This is not part of the show. This is actually a real neck brace, and it's just another testimony. Like I said, I've been almost 18 years cancer free, 17. And I've don't have any cancer, but I've had troubles for the last 17 years from the chemotherapies you take. And some of them are long lasting. I've had a degenerative bone disease in my neck for the last 6 years, and it actually broke. And I finally had neck surgery about a month ago, and it was supposed to be a 5-level fusion. Well, it actually wound up being a 3-level fusion. They got in there and said that it was too bad. They only could do 3 levels from the front, and they'd have to do a second surgery the next day. And they send me through an MRI after they do the 3 levels from the front. And ironically, it's so cool because the doctor comes into my room afterwards and says, "Do you see this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I see it." He said, "This is your neck." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't know anything about vertebrae. I don't know anything about spinal cords." So when he's telling me, he said, he's amazed and stuff. And I'm like, "What am I looking at? It's just black and white. It almost looks like, the vertebrae of a snake or something. You can't really tell what it is." And he finally says that the top 2 levels that were totally messed up, that he was going to have to fix the next day when he was just in there, he said they've actually fixed. And I said, "Well, I give all thanks to Christ, and I thank you for doing, your job." And he said, "Yeah," he said, "the good Lord must be looking out for you," because he said, he's never came across this ever. Like, something happened within that time period where it was actually fixed. So I'm doing great. I'm able to talk, as you can tell. I'm already driving some people crazy, probably talking too much. So, but I'm very blessed, and he's got me through this. And that's what that I just was wanting to explain my most recent testimony, and how God still works in today's time.
So obviously, and I want to definitely dive into the music side of this, and then obviously we're going to dive into potentially some other stuff. We're going to talk into the comic as well. because I mean, as I stated, this is a vast, vast project. There's
Mhm.
a saying where, you know, there's a company called the Kitchen Sink Press, and their logo is an octopus. And
Okay.
your company has a lot of arms, per se, in a lot of different areas. And one of them is obviously music. And I
Mhm.
think the music was first, from my
It
understanding.
is, yes.
And so, like, how did this even start with doing the music and obviously, sort of, I guess, speaking Christian music? I think is a
Mhm.
safe assumption for me to say it.
Mhm.
And how did that even just form about? Because it's really interesting. And then just you have so much in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and the reason we was wanting to do this was because, like I said before, and don't get me wrong, there is stuff that out there that's delivering a Christian message, and I guess they're doing it the correct way with practicing what they preach and stuff. But there's so many people that are not doing that, and so many times scandals and stuff you hear where people's taking people's money and it's burning people, and like it's people like with not pure motives doing things because they're wanting your money, but they're supposed to be giving you a message, but they're actually wanting your money. That seems to sometimes overshadow what their quote unquote message is supposed to be. So the approach we've tried to take, like one thing that people don't even realize, they might say, well, this band looks like they're just about money too. They're trying to sell me comics. They're trying to sell me this. Here's the thing: if you want a physical copy, because we're not rich and we self funded all this, like God always made a way, and we was like we even sold stuff to try to raise the funds for this stuff of our own personal collections and stuff. So if you want a physical copy, because we're not rich, we will charge you for that, and anything that we make off of that will go back into this project and get even more stuff, like more tentacles, as you were saying. But the all this stuff is going to be free. For example, all the music right now is all 40 songs are free on our website, because we would rather you get something out of it and try it and say, you know what, I don't have money to help these guys or pay these guys, but the message of the songs actually impacted me. It made me think about things, made me think about my life, made me think, take a second look at Jesus Christ. And that's what we're trying to do with all of our stuff. So all the music will be free. The comics, they are not on there for free yet, but they will be on our website, like where you can go through and you'll be able to read the pages and everything for free on our Instagram and on our tomorrowsend.com. We are even going to, with our card game, put out a little thing to where you can print it out, and you'll have to do some cutting and stuff. But I mean, you could literally have that for free as well. And we're just trying to make and the videos are already free right now on YouTube. And so our biggest thing is just, if, if you're really out there for a mission and you're really trying to help people and you're really trying to share your belief system with people, then it needs to be about your belief system, not about cash. Everybody gets that you have to have money to do things, but if you make it available for free, then anybody that can, and really enjoys it, may support you and do it. But for anybody that doesn't have money and stuff, I mean, all this stuff is going to be free, and we just think that
So,
makes it a little bit more pure in our case,
so we
anyways.
can even talk about that, and then we're going to talk about some music. I got some
Okay.
cool images to show as well. But one of the
Okay.
things that I think is interesting is that obviously, if you're trying to push out a mission or a
Mm-hmm.
statement, there's a lot of ways to do it. And again, I don't know much about Christianity, but somebody could preach to you, and
Mm-hmm.
that could fall very easily on deaf ears. And they could be living that lifestyle, but you've been in school, everybody's been in here, you're in a subject, and it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't connect with you. I'm a social studies major, political science, social studies, I get it instantly. I was taking AP macroeconomics, I got that thing instantly. Mathematics put me to sleep, right? Like,
Yeah.
and no matter how many times the teacher was going to teach it, it wasn't going to work. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what is that like for you? Because somebody might connect with your music or a comic book or a
Mm-hmm.
board game and get the message that you're trying to push out there and get the lesson versus somebody, I guess, delivering a sermon. You know,
Actually,
and I'm curious because I think you're doing a very different approach that's connecting and also sort of goes in an alternative way. Does that
actually,
make sense?
oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off.
Oh,
I'm
please cut me off anytime.
No, I'm quick on the gun sometimes because I'm used to these interviews being sometimes short where you have to hurry up and get your stuff out. But I wasn't trying to cut you off. No, well, what I was going to say is you've hit it like right on the head. For example, if somebody's a vegetarian and you're trying to get them, and you're promoting at McDonald's, in general, you might not be reaching that person. I know they serve salads, but that's not what they're known for. They're known for their burgers. So yeah, you're 100% right. The more diversity you have in your approach is the more people that you can reach. And if that's what you're supposed to do, which again, this comes from scripture, but it's Jesus Christ says, make disciples of all nations and stuff. During his time, he preached in a lot of times farming parables and stuff. Well, people don't farm, I don't know if you do, but I don't farm. And most of my friends don't farm and stuff. So we're just trying to take the same message and put it in things that people do now. People listen to music, people read comics, people, the Marvel movies are all the rage right now, comic book movies in general. And so we're just trying to, you hit it on the head. We're trying to put it in as many different platforms as possible and trying to make it quality as possible as well. Because we believe if at first they'd look at it and they just think, you know what, that's a cool story and it was done pretty well. So, I'm going to read that again. Maybe the second reading, they get something more out of it. First time, maybe it's just entertainment. The second time, maybe it's, it impacts them deeper. And there's layers and layers to the music, to the comics, to everything, to where if you keep on peeling it apart, it's kind of like a burrito. You might have the cheese, the beans, the meat and stuff, but if you keep on digging deeper, you keep on finding more things. And we think that makes it, more for like repeated viewings as well, because if you read a comic and it's like just all surface stuff, you read it one time and you read it a second time, you're like, oh, it's exactly like I remembered. If you read it the second time knowing it's got layers, you're like, whoa, I didn't know that. I'm going to check it out a third time. And so that's kind of our approach. And like I said, you got nailed it right on the head, because some people might not listen to somebody talk, and that's why we're also doing it in the different platforms, is because if you don't like music, maybe you like the comic. If you don't like comics, maybe you'll like the card game. If you're like, card games are stupid, but I love board games. Okay, well, we're going to try to do a board game. So that's the point, is to try to diversify. And our one of our slogans is Christian art done differently for the different in order to make a difference. And we're trying to do it as different as possible and as unique as possible and as pure as possible, where sometimes from the opposite side of the spectrum, people say this just looks like a big gimmick, or there must not be anything, deep in this stuff. But actually, it's the opposite. If you get into it, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I think people will find, and I think that hopefully will help people think about things. And I hope that answers your question pretty well, by the way.
Oh, it's absolutely fine, and even going further into this, because I do have some things, and you got a lot of music out there. And so this is probably not in the order that it was supposed to be in, but this is one of your songs, and this is almost like the thumbnail for it, which is super cool in that regard. This is also another one, and obviously there's some cool stuff there. This is something that's also out there, and I've listened to some of this. I haven't listened to all of your music. I'll be very honest. I've listened to about like 5 songs. I like this one personally the most. I would hang this up in my studio at some point, because I just like how like dark and sinister it is.
Well, no, I thank you for listening to it. And yeah, that's the picture where we actually, when we play live and stuff, and you'll see in some of the videos, we've tried to, where everything means something. Like you'll notice that all the colors are black, white, and red with a hint of gray. And that's even got a message. See, there's something deeper there. It ain't just for a branding thing, which works as well, but it's because, we live in like a, there's wrong, there's right, black and white. But if we, cling to Christ, which is where the red comes from, it's the blood of Christ. And if we, let that cover us and cling to him and his ways, we can figure out more what's right and wrong. Because if there's never no definite of right and wrong, we just have a trillion different people's opinions. So that's kind of the message of that. And that's something we try to incorporate, like I said, on all the art forms. So the comics, black, white, and red, the videos are, and the book, the board game and the card game are touch of color as well, like that. And thank you for listening to those songs, those 5 that you listened to. Thank you.
And then I watched like about 10 minutes of the other thing that I think is also interesting. And the way I view it, and if I offend you, I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine.
Is Act 1, which is almost a bunch of episodes. So it's episodes 1 through 7, and I view them as a long form music video. And it's very much a movie. Very much, I'm a big fan of wrestling. I don't know if you watch WWE, But The Undertaker's last major match was the cinematic match with AJ Styles. And I almost viewed it as a cinematic concert type thing, which is a really cool concept in of itself. And so that's the other thing that I think you've done as well, where if you're like me, I like watching things and I appreciate visual things. And that's why I like comic books as well. And so what was this like, and where did this idea come from? Because it also changes the music completely in a lot of ways.
Actually, I agree. Because I'm I guess like you are, I'm a visual and like more of a visual person than I am just I don't really, you ain't going to find me like reading a lot of novels and stuff, but I'll read graphic novels or comic books all the time because I like the visual.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, that's great. But I think sometimes when most people see it and they hear it, it can impact us more. Or same thing with a comic. If you can see it and you have an image, but you're reading something as well, sometimes you're
both sides of your brain work at the same time, and it changes the way you do it because you get something instantly, or you get tonality, or you get even just to hear something like, oh, okay, I understand that this character is supposed to sound differently, or this music is connecting with what's going on, and then you just sort of get it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That's exactly how we feel. And the biggest thing about like the videos is like sometimes people will listen to the songs and they'll be like, this is my favorite song. But then when they watch the videos, they're like, actually, no, this other one's my favorite song. They listen to the same exact set of songs. It's because something in the visual, of the video actually made them, they reacted to it. And then it said, oh, I didn't ever think about it like that. Maybe that ain't even what I didn't think that's what that meant. So, and they're actually inspired in it and in the style of like everything's kind of trying to make what's old new again. And the reason it's called Act One to Serial is, like I said before, we're not rich. We don't have no backers or anything like that. So we did it in the style of kind of the 30s and 40s or 40s and 50s, like movie serials. Like you had the old Captain Marvel and Batman and the Rocket, like the Rocket Men or whatever, where Rocketeer comes from. And it's in the style of the old, I'm talking about the old 40s and 50s movie serials. Okay. Where they had every week they would have a different episode in front of the movie. Yeah. So that's actually what we try to do it in the style of. And you'll even see like a lot of old kind of movie tropes sometimes peppered throughout the 21 episodes that'll eventually air. And that's where our thoughts was behind that, was just that if you can, again, some people might not necessarily ever listen to the music, but they might check out the videos. So you got a whole different genre of people that are checking out the stuff and hearing the message and maybe thinking about stuff. And but then again, there's people that don't like music or videos, so that's where the comic book comes in.
And even to go further into this, because when we talk about creative processes, obviously there is an order for these episodes to go into that also changes it. Obviously I just randomly picked certain songs to listen to. So I don't even remember what I listened to, but it was not in the order of acts 1 through 7. And obviously when you pick that order, it also changes the way things are viewed, what people get. And again, I'm not, a Christian per se. I'm not anti-Christian. I tend to be very much agnostic in a lot of ways, but it's the idea that I understand, and I like the Bible. I've read the Bible. I find it absolutely fascinating. I like the lessons of the Bible. But going even further into this, you picked an order, and that's also telling the story, which changes the music, it changes the visual, it changes the message. And that's something that I think people might, when they're watching this, if they only listen to the music and they don't see the video, they're missing a component of that. And so what was that like too? Because that's a whole nother level going into all this.
It is. And it's also something whenever you're starting out with all of this, some people just thought we was nuts and it would never get finished because they were just saying, you can't release 4 albums. You can't do a comic and do all this stuff around the same time. But we prayed and prayed and there was always a way made. So we're very blessed with that. But what you're saying is 100% true about that. Whenever you put a song before another song and it's telling one story, the song means something different in the video to a degree because it funnels in. Like, for example, the first song is Dive Die and the second song is Illumination. So the way the character, they have to cast their Dive Die in the video, that leads them to Illumination, which is the second song. And then the third episode is like a Jesus Frankenstein, which people always have fun with that name. Either offended or curious, or sometimes just think it's cool. And when they get to the Jesus Frankenstein, which is episode 3, it means something totally different. And what that's really trying to showcase, for example, in that song, is that sometimes which is really cool, that you have the attitude of, even though, you don't have that specific belief system, that you're still, you're not anti, I guess. And you're having me on today, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And the point of the Jesus Frankenstein song is, a lot of times in the world, whenever you start doing things that the Bible tells you to do, or start trying to live a biblical life, or a life that Christ led, and trying to imitate him, a lot of times the world looks at you as a monster, and it's trying to take the parable of the monster in the Frankenstein movies and say that whenever you're trying to sometimes do simply just what your belief system says, what Christ said to do, the world can look at you as a monster, and it's using that as a parable. And it's also even a term, an evolution of the term Jesus freak that was in the 60s and 70s. And there used to be a Christian song called Jesus Freak in the 90s. And it's just the evolution of Jesus Frankenstein. But you hit it right on the head, though, man. All the songs do funnel into each other in these videos. And it ends with Skeleton Key. And it's just about that we all have, the choice. We all have the key, to life and death. And it's our choice, what we choose. And yeah, but I think that's really cool that you noticed that and pick that up with the videos and stuff. Because some people don't. They're just like, okay, that was a neat video. They don't actually understand the depth and stuff. So I think that's really cool that you picked up on that, and that they mean different things in the videos than they do just listen to it, headphones or something.
It's fascinating, and I mean, I'm only 15 minutes in, so I didn't see the whole thing, but obviously I picked up the fact that it does tie in, and it also is different, because when you're listening to music, and it's the same thing with an album outside and just music world, where if you buy an album, which very few people apparently do, and you listen to the whole album, it's different than if you're listening to the hits of that album. And it does change the way listening to music happens. And then also when you buy a live album, that's very different too, especially if it was all recorded at the exact same time. I just picked up a Linkin Park album a while back, and the entire thing was recorded all at once. So it was legitimately their concert for an hour and a half straight up. And it was wonderful, because it's different than when you're listening to that exact same album. But,
no, I agree with that. And
I'm a big Linkin Park fan. So I just want to throw that out there. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing here, and I will take the L on that for anybody who gets upset with me.
But no, and even on that, this is something not a lot of people know, but I mentioned it on one of the podcasts a week ago, so I guess it's out there. But it's not something we're promoting, but like what you said, it's a totally different feel, and it's a totally different, it's a totally different environment when you do something live. Before, whenever I heal up and stuff, this might be 6 months to a year, just depending on what happens. But we're actually going to be doing a live concert for pro shot multi-camera show, and it'll have a little bit of theatrics and stuff, maybe a little bit of pyro and some surprises, to where it's, again, some people they just like live music. They don't really like studio music. So hopefully that'll be a different component that people can tune into. To, again, like I said, our biggest thing is the message, and just if people will open their ears and take a second look, again, for anybody out there who's turned it away based on hypocrisy, or just turned it away because they thought it was a fairy tale. If you take a second look and really get into it, I think I really believe that people would find something more, and they would see something. They would find truth, because truth is different. We have a lot of things, where a lot of things are subjective, but truth is truth. And just to get back to your live video, Linkin Park thing, though, that's what brought me onto this subject. It's just a different atmosphere, and that'll be free as well. So just another thing that we're hopefully going to get to do here within the year.
So you got a lot of stuff going on. I got 15 ideas that I'm going to throw out to you after we're off the air. Okay. I don't feel like giving anybody anything free completely, but I'll give you 15 ideas that may or may not change your business per se. But I'm going to table that for now, because I do want to talk about the comic book side of this.
Okay.
Because that's the area that I am an expert in. As far as we're all concerned here, I love comic books. I buy and sell comic books. I invest in comic books. And so how did that come about. I mean, and I'm going to say this, but this is like, in my opinion, comic books would be the last thing I think, would I would expect. If
Mhm.
with the music I get, the videos I expect, a board game would not be something I expected out of
Mhm.
you and in this group, and not a comic book either. So how did this come out? Because I think it's kind of cool.
Well, the I guess um, genesis of the idea was I'm a comic book fan. I have been my whole life. My dad was a collector in the 80s and stuff, like during like Frank Miller's Daredevil and Frank Miller's Batman and stuff like that. And that's what I grew up reading. And I was like, man, this is really cool stuff. And of course, I like Superman, and X-Men cartoon was in the 90s. So I was big into that and Spider-Man. So I've grew up my whole life liking comics and stuff. And what are comics about? They're about good versus evil in general. I mean, you got other stuff out there, but in general, it's usually good versus evil and stuff, especially superhero stuff. So I was like, we had these characters in the videos, and we had all this theatrical stuff in the videos. And I was just thinking, you know what? Maybe this will actually translate better in some forms. Like, of course, when you hear the music and you see the videos, it gives you a full picture and stuff. But I actually think in some instances the comic fleshes it out more. And like the Jester picture you showed of one of our songs had the big guy with the black suit and the mask and the big looks like a Skeletor staff, kind of got the skull on that one. So again, in the videos you see that it's an evil person and stuff, and it's or an evil entity, and they kind of battle him and stuff. You notice that from that, and you're like, okay, that's the representation of evil. But when you get into the comics and stuff, it explains who the characters are. It explains who that character is. He's called the trickster or whatever. And it's just using the old trickster motif that they use in, literature for, thousands of years. And the point of that is you can get deeper with a comic, because these are all double-sized issues, by the way. So they're all 48 pages. So within the 48 pages, the first 3 issues is just introducing the 5 characters, and they're fighting their demons, so to speak, what they struggle with, like the T character that I portray, like in the videos and stuff. But in the comic, he fights against, I don't know if you can see, but there it is. He fights against, and that's supposed to be the embodiment of lust and stuff. And he's battling against that. While the next issue, it's got 2 characters. Yeah, there it is. And it's battling against one of those. The monster, the Frankenstein, a Hulk looking monster, is envy, and the robot is greed. And that's why it's so big, because he's had so much greed and stuff in his life that he's built this humongous, every cog represents his greed. So anyways, and it's mixing genres as well. So I just think, and there we get to an alien and a pirate spaceship. I mean, you don't generally see those things always anyways together. So these are just trying to put it out in a different platform, and where you can get more in depth, figure out things.
To even talk about that,
Go ahead.
because one of the things that's interesting is that obviously, and I'm taking a leap of faith here, but you could just read this as these are just heroes, and obviously these
Mm-hmm.
people and these characters are based off of what all of you guys in the
Mm-hmm.
band and Tomorrow's End. But also you could just read it, hey, these are just heroes fighting, evil
Mm-hmm.
and coming across situations, and obviously people have moral conflicts within them
Mm-hmm.
because nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to Superman, Batman. They question themselves sometimes, am I doing the right thing? And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously you could read it on that basic level, and it could have no tie to anything in Christianity. It could just be a cool superhero story. But then you could say, okay, there's some really good moral values here,
Mm-hmm.
and you could read it on a moral level. And again, obviously that's some teaching in Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
or you can dive even further into it. And it's really depending on how somebody wants to read it, I feel, in
No, yeah.
this. And that's very interesting. And
Well,
so, what
yeah.
was this like, really creating the comic and putting it
Mm-hmm.
out there, and then also tying it back to the music and to the
Mm-hmm.
videos? And obviously, we didn't speak about the board game or the dice game or the
Yeah.
card game,
Yeah.
but getting it back into that too, also
Mm-hmm.
because obviously now we're really building out a universe, and
Mm-hmm.
we're building out a whole company per se,
Mm-hmm.
and everything feeds into each other and builds off of
Mm-hmm.
each other, but it's also individually operating, if that makes any sense.
No, it is. And the one thing, the best example I can give is this is a different universe than like the videos and stuff. So it's not like a Star Wars where the Clone Wars and the Star Wars comics impact the movies, like where they are all in the shared universe or whatever. Like the comic is its own thing. So it has no tie to the videos or the music, but everything that is in those videos or music, the concepts will still be here, but it's not like it's a different universe. The multiverse.
I'll give an example. You're a
Mhm.
comic book guy. Did
Yeah.
you know DC has multiple Earths,
Yeah, the
right?
multiverse, yes.
So Earth 2, there's Green Lantern in Earth 2, or
Mhm.
there's Flash
Mhm.
in Earth 2, but it's not the same Flash
Yeah.
as in regular Earth. But again, there's still evil stuff happening
Yes.
in, Earth 2,
Mhm.
and there's still things that function. So obviously you don't go and say, oh man, person A in Earth 2 is, jumping to Earth 1.
Mhm.
Every once in a while they jump to Earth 1, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that it's clear the universes are separated, but there's rules. And even going
Mhm.
into that though, like if you listen to the music and you start the video and then you pick up the comic book, it's sort of, you're going to see a bunch of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Whether it's directly the same universe or not, you're still
Mhm.
seeing it. And there's still a basis, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
Yes.
So I think it's fascinating
Well,
in that
you're
regard.
correct. And the reason we wanted to do it that way, like kind of like the multiverse concept, is because we didn't want anybody to be scared off either. Because when you put out 40 songs and you're going to put out 21 episodes, and then you're going to put out, this is going to be the Age of Tomorrow's End will eventually be 16 comics, all double sized issues. We didn't want to scare anybody off and be like, I'm not gonna check that out. I don't want to listen to 40 songs to understand a comic book. So what we was doing was everything is its own thing. But if you do, try it all out and you do get into it that deep, you will see, it'll be even more, it'll be extras. It's kind of like, extra sour cream on your taco or something, it's extra, but it's not necessarily necessary. So, but yeah, in the comic, the biggest thing about that is that you asked the idea behind it. Again, comics have always been about good and evil, but when do you ever see very often like something that is 100% trying to give I guess a Christian outlook on good and evil, like through a comic form, as opposed to, like, I'm not talking about like illustrated Bibles or stories like that. I'm talking about like parables or stories, and we hadn't really found that. I'm not saying it ain't out there, so if anybody messages me or tags me on Facebook and says,
There's a few. There's a few out
yeah,
there
yeah,
for
there is, and I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm saying we didn't see a lot of it, and there's plenty of Christian artists and writers out there though, but you don't, it doesn't, what's the word? It doesn't add up. Like, for example, if you're a farmer, you farm and stuff, and you do it for your family and stuff, and you do it for your career. Well, if you're a believer and stuff, well, we are given these talents and these blessings to share with others. So are we trying to do that as a collective? And I didn't see that the number of believing artists and the number of um content, echo each other. So anyways, that's why we was just trying to do it, if that makes sense.
yeah, and then also just even going further into comics. I mean, obviously there's things you could do in a comic book that you can't do in video.
Mhm.
Also, and feel free to disagree with me, but a comic book, as far as television production
Mhm.
wise, is way cheaper than
Mhm.
than any other medium. I mean, to some degree. Obviously, if you're writing a novel, that's
Mhm.
the cheapest form of content because all you need is a laptop, a word processor, and some electricity, and you could write a novel. I
Mhm.
didn't say print the novel. I said you could write it. I
Yeah.
want to make that crystal clear. But obviously, comic books tend to be cheaper than television, than
Mhm.
anime. I don't know about music production per se compared to comics, but also just to throw another product out there, a comic book is a very cheap product to produce. All things considering versus
Mhm.
television, a movie, an animated series, things of that nature. It tends to be, not saying it's dirt cheap. That's not where
Mhm.
I'm going with this. I know exactly how much a comic book costs to make. Um, and I know because everybody in Kickstarter is doing it, and I know the
Mhm.
exact numbers. I may or may not be writing one, is all I'm going to say. But what is that like for you that you're also in that space as well right now?
Well,
Because
oh, go ahead.
it also makes you different.
Mhm.
You're doing art differently to get a different result. And if you have a comic, you're now in that space, whether I don't know if the intention is to compete per se, but you are now in that marketplace. Or maybe competing is not the right word, but
Mhm.
you're in the comic marketplace now. And that could be a gateway to everything else. Where somebody like me would not be known you were on the, I guess, market for like, I hate to keep using the word market, if you didn't have a comic book. It
Mhm.
would not come across my desk per se
Mhm.
if there was not a comic book. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. And uh, like I said before, there's a lot of elements of this that I think are best suited for the comic book as opposed to the others because we, like you said about budget and stuff, we're not millionaires. Uh, I mean, we're not even thousandaires. So we can do a lot more with the book than we can in the videos and stuff. Like there's a 100-foot robot in issue 2. I can't afford the CG or to build a 100-foot robot for live action, entertainment. So can't do that. But you're just limited to your imagination and the artist's capabilities. And the artist that does all this stuff, who's partnered with us, Dan Drews from Indiana. Like I said before, if he's out there, he's an awesome artist, and he's got his own testimony, his own story. He'll get to share sometime soon. And he's an awesome artist. So anything that I think of and put in the books, he's always been able to draw. And like you said, it's a totally different. It opens up more avenues for you. It's kind of I mentioned McDonald's earlier. It's like when they used to offer their salads and stuff. Well, if your date got a date and they're a vegetarian and you love the cheeseburger, you can say, hey, I can finally go to McDonald's now because they serve a salad, so I can feed her a salad. So the point is you're trying to make something where it can reach so many vast number of people and where people will check it out. Again, we're not expecting everybody to check out the comic that checks out the music or that checks out the videos to go back to the comic. If you like all that stuff, awesome. We got it for you. But if not, if you like any of these, check any of them out. They all stand on their own. They all have the same overall message, but they get there from different ways. It's like having an endpoint, but with many roads to get there, if that makes sense, through the art.
Yeah, no, I think it's very, very interesting. And obviously, I think that different things lead gateways into other
Mm-hmm.
things. I'm a big proponent of a bunch of stuff leads into another thing that leads into another thing that leads into another thing. I'm a big anime fan.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, every kid was watching Dragon Ball. And then
Mm-hmm.
that led into a bunch of other stuff, into things like Gundam, and then into things like, Naruto, and then things like a bunch of other stuff. But again, one thing leads into another. And it's very important that, and I think people need to understand that also in comics, a lot of people have come into comics in very different ways now. And people have come in on a music level where there's all these, music people that are now doing comics. I mean, there are people who are fans of the Foo Fighters, and the Foo Fighters did a free comic book for Comic Book Day. And so
Mm-hmm.
now, if you're like, oh man, I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan, and they did a comic, I want to read that. And then you look at a band like Within Temptation, and they did a comic. That was like a bonus when you bought the album. And now all of a sudden, that builds a generation into things. And then there's a bunch of other companies that have done comics, and it's like, oh snap! And then all of a sudden, somebody is now reading Superman. And so I think that you figured out, and I think it's a very smart move.
Thank you.
On a messaging standpoint, on a business standpoint, to say, look, there are people who like comics, and they're willing to try a comic on, that's dealing with Christianity. It looks like a
Mm-hmm.
superhero book. It looks like a fun book. And then what else does this company have to offer? And that's the things that you're convincing somebody through another product that then spreads the message and also introduces pretty much anybody who's picked up your book into everything else that you've done. It's almost a funnel.
No, I agree. Like as a kid, like I said before, one of the first cartoons I was really extremely crazy about was the X-Men animated series. And soon as I watched that, the first thing I said was, "Hey, Dad, is that in anything else?" And he said, "Actually, here's some of my comic books." And I was like, "Oh man!" So that got me into comics. And then after when the movies come out and stuff, I'm like, "Oh man!" So but what you're saying is 100% correct. Everything funnels into everything else, and it's just a, just trying to put it out in as many ways as possible, because we believe the Christian message and everything is for everybody. So it's for people that like books. It's for people that hate books. It's for people that like music, that hate music. So how do you reach all the different types of people? And you do it by putting it, hopefully, as quality as you can. You don't ever shortchange people. That's why every issue is double sized. So that way, instead of just buying, a regular size book, it's going to be double sized. Which if you don't like it, that's probably going to make it worse for you, because now you got to sit through 48 pages. But if you like it, it's going to be, more content and more of an experience than hopefully than just a single issue. So yeah, that's I would say the best description of what we're trying to do with the comic, if all that makes sense and comes across through my words.
And then even talking about it, and it's an easy sell because people who like comics tend to like card games. They tend to like board games. I know the board game's not out, but I know the card game is. And so that's another thing too, where obviously comics are very associated with anime, their cousins, board games, card games, collectible games are also very associated with comic books, and they're all really in the same vein, where to go from a comic book to playing a card game is an easy jump. It happens all the time. And somebody either comes in as a card fan and then they get into comics, or they come in as a comic fan and then get into card games. And so what is that like to have a card game as well? Because obviously if people like this, or you're a parent and you obviously are looking for a Christian game to teach values, and that's a big issue right now in this country, is what are my kids going to be watching? What are they going to be engaging? What are they going to be playing? What are they going to be reading? And so what is that like to have that? Because that really does also work in association.
Oh, I agree. Actually, every comic shop, at least around here, they all deal in games and comics. Like nowhere in our immediate area is there just a comic store or a game store. They usually are.
They live on Magic the Gathering draft night.
Yeah,
A lot of shops live on that.
They do. And so transition into a card game, it was trying to find something that engages you again, and trying to find something that, again, it's a teaching thing, but it's a fun thing as well. And it's a thing that it ties back in. Again, if you look further, it ties back in with the music and it ties in with the book. But if you don't, you can literally just play the card game and have an experience and still be thinking about stuff. Like by the end, you'd be like, I never thought about it that way. Or, just something to kind of get you to think about things, but also while you're having a good time. Like when I say this, I do want to tell everybody that all this stuff is entertainment and stuff. So it ain't like a lecture. This isn't a sermon from page 1 to 48 or from in the card deck. It isn't a list of just things that are, gonna, trying to hammer down a point, to you. It's entertainment with an overall message to it. So if you play it and stuff, some people, if they're not deep thinkers and stuff, might not even notice it. They might just say, that's okay. That's a fun book, or that was a fun game. But if you look at it deeper, you will, you'll see those underneath layers of, I guess, belief and right and wrong, and like you said, ethics and stuff like that, and values. So I think that, again, if people just come to these things and want to check it out, I think they'll still have a good time. If they want to look deeper, they will find it 100%. So but the biggest reason to do the card game is me and my wife, like, we'll play card games and stuff. And one day we was playing something and I said, you know what? Why don't we do a card game too? And of course it sounds crazy at first, but again, like you said, it's a very easy jump from the comic to the card game, and then to the board game, which will be out later this year.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I could barely tie my shoes. I could barely tie my shoes, and like just I don't even know how to build a board game yet or anything of that nature. And I could barely tie my shoes. So it's super interesting, and it's amazing though at the same time, because you as a company and as a message, and this project has not been around for a long time, and having 40 songs out there and doing the card game and doing 3 issues of the comic, and obviously having I mentioned the card game, and then obviously the board game's coming, and then even going further, you're doing stop motion as well. And so, what is all this like? Because you're really building out something, and there's something for everybody that would be willing to at least try it, whether they get the message. Because obviously, somebody has to, I think, be receptive to the message. There's a whole thing where I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody about my beliefs as long as they're willing to listen.
No,
the key there is that somebody has to be willing to listen. So when I have religious debates with people, I present mine, and if they're willing to listen to mine and then they present theirs, obviously we could have a discussion. So I think that's something that you've done very well, where you're providing as many opportunities if somebody wants to at least listen.
Oh, I agree. Thank you for that, by the way, because a lot of people don't notice that, and that's 100% true. And you have to listen to other people too. Like, you can't just come out there, for example, and I can't say, read this comic, and they'll say, oh, can I tell you something? No, you can't tell me nothing, but do what I ask. Now, you have to practice what you preach, and if you're wanting somebody to take the time, I don't know, to listen to 30 minutes of you should be able to give them 30 minutes to listen to what they think and stuff. That's a dialogue. That's a conversation. Otherwise, it's just, it can just be a rant. So we need to listen to what other people say. But yeah, if people will take the time and check the stuff out, I think that they, like you just said, if they're receptive, they'll see something deeper. If not, they will still have an experience, and hopefully it'll be a good versus evil story that they like. And branching out from all these things, like you said, about doing all these things at once, it's just something. There's plenty of musicians out there, and there's so many bands out there, like not just in Christian music, I'm saying just in general, so many independent bands. And so how do we try to stand out from that? If you've got a message that you want everybody to hear, but it's a market with millions and millions of artists and stuff, how do you stand out? And so if you diversify and you're like, you know what, I like comics, people like comics, I think these characters will do well in a comic because it's probably in some instances, like I said, even better in the comic because your budget's your imagination and the artist's ability, which he's got a lot of ability, so that works out. But so now you're not just a band, but you're doing a comic book, so that helps you stand out. Then the card game.
Let me ask you a question, because I don't view you as a band. I view you as a plant. And I think this is something that I'm going to challenge you slightly on. If you don't mind me doing it, where I view you as a brand, where I think you started out as a band, but you're a brand because you have a comic book, you have videos, you're going to do stop motion. And that's what I think is the difference here, is that you've become a brand, and it's, obviously doing a lot of different art projects differently, whether it's music, stop motion, a card game, a comic, to really talk about Christianity and present it a certain way. And I think it's very interesting because, again, as you stated, there's a million musicians out there. I don't think you're competing against, obviously Linkin Park's one of my favorite bands of all time. You're not competing against Linkin Park, but what you're doing is just saying, hey, we got a comic book. You know who doesn't have a comic book right now? Linkin Park doesn't have a comic book. Who doesn't have a board game? Linkin Park doesn't have a board game. And I'm not trying to compare you to Linkin Park.
I understand.
But the idea is that all of a sudden that's what the secret sauce is. And I think it's very interesting because you found a way how to spread your message and be competitive. And that's what's so interesting.
Well, thank you very much. And that is actually the point, because we're not trying to compete with anybody. Like, we're not wanting you to get our stuff so you don't get somebody else's stuff or anything like that. We're just trying to say, anybody that likes music, we got it. Anybody that likes comics, we got it. Anybody that likes card games or board games or the stop motion thing that we're going to get into, or our videos, if you like any of those things, check us out. And if you don't, that's cool too. But if you do, check it out. And we think you'll be entertained. We think if you look deeper, you'll find a message. And I agree that, that's why I refer to us, like I said, a lot of times as a project now, because I do agree. I think it is more of a brand than, even though we started out with just music and stuff, I think it is more of a brand, and that's what we're trying to do. And we've even been blessed, like locally, we're getting our stuff, some local stores and stuff, and branching out state by state to get physical merchandise in stores. So that's even working out right now. And the reason that that's been working out, again, I give all credit and all glory to Christ. And but I do think a lot of it is also because we are like when we tell them that we had music, plus we had books, plus we had other stuff, they're like, okay, we'll take a chance, because there's a little bit more of a possibility of somebody picking up one of those items than just your music, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And you got a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of crazy. And I know you have a bunch of stuff, and I'm gonna give you a chance to self promote in a second here.
Well, you're fine.
But what is next? Because obviously you mentioned the board game, you got stop motion. I don't know. Obviously, at some point when you're next in a better place, which is hopefully a lot sooner, and I'm praying for you on that one.
Thank you.
But small victories first. Small victories first, right?
Yes.
We count our small victories when we can, right?
Oh yeah. Always.
But what's next for everybody in the band and the music and the comic and all that stuff? Because as I stated, you got a bunch of pots cooking, for lack of a better word.
Yes, and sometimes they, if you let it, it can get overwhelming. But if you just take it one thing at a time, you can do it. And the biggest thing I would say is we're about to release Act 2, which will be videos 8 through 12. So we're about to release Act 2 on YouTube and stuff. And it's then after that, it'll be Act 3 and then Act 4. And it'll be eventually like 21 episodes if you watch them all together, where it's going to be about 2 hours of like a humongous video of 21 music videos that tell one story. So that's the immediate thing, as well as issue 3 is going to be going to the printer in, I guess, about a week and a half. So it's going to be out there and it'll be on the website where people can check it out and, purchase it, or once we get it up, they can even just read it for free or whatever. But so that's with the comic, but we're going to eventually have 16 issues of this Age of Tomorrow's End. And the biggest thing after that is just to do the stop motion, get that finished, because that's going to take some time. I mean, stop motion takes time. And that's why I said it's for first quarter, really, 2023. It's going to be a small project. And after that, like I said, when my neck heals and stuff, we're wanting to go out and do a live show that is to where, like, if anybody looks, you won't really find us on YouTube like with live music. And it ain't because I'm against that or anything. It's like we've been blessed to play in 22 states and we have footage of it. It's just I wanted to make sure when people see it, they see the full show. They don't just see a handheld, they see it with, we're going to do it with pro audio, pro video, and do it with the best of our ability. So that way people that can't make it out to maybe a show that we do, they can get still the experience from YouTube or wherever we decide to put it out. Well, it'll be on YouTube, but we'll probably put it on our website as well. So we're doing that. And you mentioned wrestling earlier. Eventually, which this may be a few years off, but just to show you that we have multi-year plans here, we actually, for our next set of 40 songs, because there's going to be eventually 160 songs that we release. We've just released 40, a fourth of them. So whenever we release the next set of 40 songs, it's instead of like a superhero theme like you see with the Age of Tomorrow's End with the XITS characters, it's more of a wrestling theme. And here's the last promo page of our magazine. Anyways, but like there's actually custom wrestling belts and stuff that we've had made and commissioned that we've like the on real leather and stuff and done as good as we could. And they have like the Tomorrow's End logo on them and stuff. And it's based off the verse in the scripture that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and higher places from Ephesians 6:12. And it's going to be a wrestling themed video project and another comic book that will be doing that. But again, that might be a few years from now, but you just asked what we had in the pipeline.
And obviously you got a bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to push it too hard on what's going to be coming, because I know that the next three big things is issue 3, obviously, is going to be available for everybody who wants it, both digitally and physically, relatively soon. I mean, in about a month, I would say is a fair assessment. Month and a half. Usually is printing and getting it up there, getting it back to you, is my guess. And then following that, obviously, the board game, which is early next year, and then the stop motion, which just takes forever. It's picture by picture, guys.
Yes.
But I'm not going to push you too hard on everything else. But I do want to give you a chance to self promote
Mhm.
So where can people buy a bunch of this stuff? Obviously, I know you have a shop, and I know you got CDs. I
Mhm.
know you got some other stuff. I think you got like a magazine,
Mhm.
companion. I think you have shirts. I think you have, I guess bracelets or
Yeah.
wristbands. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what they're called anymore. I'm not one of those guys that like, whatever they're called, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, the comic book, if you want a physical copy.
Mhm.
And then there's some other stuff that you have up as well. Obviously, the game,
Mhm.
physically, if you want the game.
Yes.
And so I don't know what else you got as far as on merch wise.
Mhm.
Where can people find you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube channel, anywhere else? Where can people donate if they feel so generous and kind
Mhm.
to donate and say, hey, look, I really like this project.
Mhm.
Here's $5 because,
Mhm.
I want you guys to continue. Here's $1. Every little bit helps. So any and
Mhm.
all of that.
Okay, definitely. Well, tomorrowsend.com is kind of the hub for everything, whereas it'll have links to the Facebook, to the Twitter, to Instagram, and all of that, which the Instagram is going to be up and going again because we've just started releasing this stuff not very long ago. So we're getting everything up and going and the not just the content, but also the platforms. But yeah, it'll so tomorrowsend.com, and that's tomorrow's with a Z that I always tell people because sometimes people will look up tomorrow's.com, tomorrowsend.com, and they'll say, I didn't find it. And I said, did you spell it with an S? And they say, yes. And I said, well, spell it with a Z. Just how we branded it and stuff. So it's tomorrow's with a Z, then END.com. It'll have links to the store where you can get physical copies of the comic, all 4 CDs, the card game, guitar picks, wristbands, T-shirts, our magazine that we have released. It'll have everything that we have for sale there. So it'll have all of that. But also, if they want to just type in Tomorrow's End on Facebook, we have a friends page and a likes page. Sometimes that throws people off, and they're like, "Why do you got 2 pages?" Well, for people that actually want to stay in touch with us and like actually literally more have like a relationship, if they just want to talk to us or literally kind of more be our friends, we have a friends page. But if you just want to say, well, I like your stuff, okay, I don't want to really, talk to you though, just go. They can just go like it at Ready for Tomorrow's End after Facebook, but it's actually a page instead of just a friends page. And if you like us a lot, you can do both. You can friend us and like us. I mean, that doesn't hurt nobody either. So that's what you can. That's our Facebook information, and then on YouTube, if you just type in Tomorrow's End, it'll pull up our channel, and we have the teaser on there, a mission statement, a XITS video, which is just a culmination of the 22 states we went to just to kind of just as a little bit of promotion. And then it'll have Act 1 up right now, which is 7 episode video serial with Act 2, 3, and 4 coming within a couple months. So that's I guess, like I said, tomorrowsend.com really is the hub, though. It'll have the links to all that stuff.
And so, I mean, I'm just going to keep saying it. I've been saying it for almost 3 years now, and I'm getting sick and tired of saying it. So just start doing it, everybody. You have to support indie projects. Obviously, they supported me, and they bought me essentially a coffee / on PayPal. And it doesn't take a lot to support somebody. And I'm an indie project, and obviously, what you guys are doing is very indie.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with indie projects that are capitalistic to some degree either. But again, obviously they're trying to push out a message. If you like their message, you're like, hey, this sounds kind of cool, and we'll give it a try. First and foremost, you should go check out their website, listen to some of their music. If you actually like their music, you should go buy their music. You should go listen to it. You should go tell a bunch of your friends, hey, this is kind of cool. You should watch the stuff on YouTube. Subscribe to their YouTube channel is another thing. If you're a little skeptical, and as I was stating, if you actually like it, you should then go buy the comic, buy the music, buy the magazine. Or if you say, hey, look, you know what it is? I don't really want to own something physically because I'm not that type of person. You can donate, and that goes a long way in helping people out, and it makes a huge difference. You say, hey, look, I listen to your music, I really like it. I wish there was an MP4 of this, but here's $20. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and it really helped me out, and that goes a long way too. Or better yet, share it. That's a big thing too, because a share is worth just as much as money is right now in society, because you never know who you're sharing it with. I share things on my Facebook wall, and people have gotten backers on Kickstarter, and they've gotten like $100 backer on Kickstarter, which helped fund somebody's projects. So that's another thing too, is shares matter, retweets matter, Instagram story likes matter. So go and do all that, because again, this is an indie project by definition, and you have to support it both economically and in social media and engaging and share it with people that you know. And so I'm going to recommend everybody go and do that, because it does make a big difference. As far as I'm concerned about me, obviously all my social media is down there below. It's at Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You could type in conversations in pop culture as well. I'm also on YouTube at Pop Anime Comics. All my interviews are free unless there is a specific interview, where very rarely an interview will be behind a paywall. And if it's behind a paywall, there's a really good reason for it. And I'm also teaching a class in October 5th about comic book investing, throwing it out there. That is behind a paywall, but it's not going to be ultra expensive. It's just the idea that if I'm going to make you my competitor as an investor, I want a head start, is all I'm going to say. So on that point, but all things seriousness though, I do appreciate everybody who supports me. I have a Buy Me a Coffee link. It goes a long way. It means a lot to me when people support this show. I appreciate you supporting the show, and I appreciate when people actually share the show. That means just as much as money. You know, when somebody actually takes the time to share this show, it means the world to me. So I recommend doing that. Obviously, if you're going to buy the comics, bag and board them, guys. Again, use code POPAnimeComics, 10% off at BCW Supplies. It's expensive. Inflation sucks. That's all I'm going to say. So save yourself 10%. I just did a $200 order and I saved myself $20. Goes a long way. But I digress right there. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you for having me on today, because again, like I said before, if you don't have a show like this, then people like me or anybody else can't come on here, can't promote their stuff, can't tell their story, can't make awareness for, whatever they're trying to do. So thank you for having me on here today. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story. And I guess the final word that I would say is, again, we hope that people enjoy the content. We hope people enjoy the music. We hope people enjoy the comic. We hope people enjoy all the things we do. But at the end of the day, what we're really hoping is to share a message, the message of Jesus Christ. And I always just say, it's where the band name comes from, just to always ask yourself, am I ready for tomorrow's end?
Yeah, I got nothing after that, everybody. So that's a wrap.